Now, my background is mostly in strength conditioning in terms of barbell sports, weightlifting, Olympic style weightlifting, and powerlifting, things like that. But in reality, I've also worked with a tremendous amount of endurance athletes. When I say tremendous, that's probably an overstatement, but a lot of endurance athletes, mostly because of my doctoral work was at the University of Utah. There's an opportunity to work with some of the rowers that went to the Olympic Games in Rio, where I'm currently located. And so throughout my course as a strength conditioning practitioner and as a professor, I've worked with a lot of endurance athletes, and I've also had the chance to do some, and I say some because I don't know, at least 40 plus. I'm going to say 40 on the conservative end, running gait analyses locally of local athletes and even to more advanced athletes, both triathletes, tri-sport athletes, and also just those that are doing endurance sport as a runner. And so a lot of video to watch, a lot of corrective things about foot placements, and I'll make another video on hip strength and some of the drills that should be done almost daily for runners in particular. But what usually arises when I watch these videos with the individual that comes in is, while there's some gait analyses or some gait faults that can be addressed through mobility drills, specific strength things, general strength is often not as often the issue when it comes to many of these gait cycle issues that I'm seeing in the video. And so what I did here is I made a video of 3 exercises that if you're a runner and you wanted to just do 3 exercises with weights, dumbbells even, not even a barbell, and then you don't feel real experienced with it, that's fine. But these are 3 exercises that I would work in at least twice a week. Okay, start where you're at. So 1 set, maybe you haven't been doing anything, 1 to 2 sets might be sufficient. You can start in that 10 rep range. But what I would actually encourage you to do, especially as races near, and so that could be 4 weeks out, is start to do heavier loaded versions of these exercises. In other words, add a heavier dumbbell and do less repetitions. What happens many times in endurance sport and running, I'm thinking of particular right now, is that there's a fear of lifting weights because of getting bigger. And there's a fear of lifting weights because it takes so much time and energy away from running. And the reality is, if you lift weights like you should when it comes to endurance sport, it actually takes less time than you think, and you don't gain near the muscle mass you would that in comparison to how the way most people train. So most people train with high repetition sets, 2 to 20, or 2 sets of 15 to 20, etc. Well, that can build muscle mass more than doing 2 sets of 5 with a heavier weight. And if we're not going to failure, we won't get fatigue. And if we're not getting failure and we're not gaining fatigue and we're not gaining muscle mass, what we're gaining is neuromuscular strength. And that's the kind of strength you want when you put your foot in the ground. That'll propel you further in every stride. Length is bigger than it was before you got stronger. And I've seen this played out with endurance athletes that I've worked with in the past in terms of running. And we have this in the research literature. You put more force in the ground, you run faster. Whether you're a sprinter or endurance athlete, it makes no difference. And so for the endurance athlete, I think we're seeing this more and more in the endurance world, is that there's a move towards lifting heavy things rather than lifting light things many, many, many times, just because that looks like the sport. You already do many, many repetitions of the same thing over and over again with your body weight. Why do that in the weight room? That will beat you up. That will take a lot of time. That will take a lot of energy. That will potentially gain muscle mass that you don't want. Instead, move towards heavier things. Now sets of 5 are fantastic. Right before, 2 weeks out from a run, you might do split squats, 3 sets of 3 with a really heavy load with 2 repetitions of failure. I mean, you're not going to complete failure. It's just really heavy. That doesn't take much time at all. That's 9 repetitions. But your legs will be strong without soreness, without fatigue, and you go out there and start running, you're going to feel fantastic. Now, I'm going to have a book, a manual on how to write or how to program these particular exercises, but I wanted to share at least these 3 exercises. Now, I'm going to make another video on the supportive specific strength exercises as related to the lateral hip in particular, and even neck position, things like that are more specific. But in general, these are 3 general resistance training exercises that you will find benefit if you employ them. You can do this twice a week. Start where you're at. Work up to 3 sets eventually. Like I mentioned, starting at 3 sets of 10 to 12. As you are able to perform the exercise properly, you might start with 4 sets of 6 with a really light load just because you need a break. After 6 repetitions, you know that your technique isn't very good. That's okay to do, but the point is that the total amount of repetitions is going to initially be higher than it would as you go along. So for example, you might do 3 sets of 10, that's 30 repetitions, or 3 sets of 15, that is 45 repetitions, but you're not going to stay there. You only do that for a few weeks. And then you're going to start to reduce the repetitions every 2 weeks at least as the load gets higher, and that could be ramped up towards your race. That's a really simplistic way of programming, but it's very effective, especially if you haven't been lifting weights for endurance performance. In particular, we're talking about here is running. So I'm gonna let my video run. It's kind of clunky at times, and I'll stop it and start it, and we'll try to keep this smooth possible. But the first one is a split squat. So if you have a set of dumbbells, if you have some water jugs, I mean anything you can, a wall to hold on to, this is a great place to start. Now, if you are weak enough, if you aren't strong enough, if you're too weak to do your own body weight on one leg, that's a telltale sign you really need to incorporate some movements. And I would back up then to maybe a bilateral 2-leg goblet squat or a simple just body weight squat to begin. Okay, so that there is a place you can start before this, but as you are able, I would move to this exercise as your knees feel good, okay, and so on. All right, so let's look at this video. I'm holding on to the wall here on purpose to give myself some balance. So if you're just beginning, this may be where you need to start. It's okay if your knee tracks over your big toe. That's all a bunch of bogus stuff when we say don't let your knee go past your big toe. What's important is that your weight is sitting in the back of this front foot right here. And I'll show you the front view in a minute where your knee should be aligned. Weight sitting in front here. Notice I drop straight down. My back foot is straight. Okay, I'm not having my foot curled out. A lot of times we're lazy with this back foot, and that's when we get some knee pain that develops. And so I'm going to just sink straight down the elevator shaft, nice and tall, holding on to the wall. I'm going to show you the front view here so you can see, and it's cut off just a little bit, but my knee is tracking just outside my big toe. It's not tracking way out here. It's just tracking right outside my big toe. So I want to limit any sort of collapse that occurs at my knee. Notice again, this back foot and knee are in alignment as well. That'll save your knee. Okay, so I have nice alignment in the front here. Again, my knee is tracking outside big toe. Watch that knee does not collapse inward. Keep it outside your big toe, okay? That alone will help strengthen the lateral hip, which is many times a problem with running gait, okay? What we call Trendelenburg gait, okay? Now I got a goblet here. So I've held the dumbbell in a goblet style, which is an easy way to hold a dumbbell of added body weight. Now I'm gonna grab 2 dumbbells. I'm gonna sit up nice and tall here. Notice the dumbbells don't drift. This is where people get in trouble with split squats, drifting forward. When you get to the bottom, if you feel like a lot of wiggles are happening, you're losing your balance, you're not staying in the back of your foot, squeeze your abdominal muscles as hard as you can, like somebody's about ready to punch you in the stomach. That's a very simplistic way of thinking about it, but stay nice and tall, abs tight, squeeze your blades together slightly. Okay, this is just the basics. There's other ways to do a bracing maneuver that are more complex, but just to be simple, somebody's gonna punch you in the gut, squeeze as hard as you can. Okay, weight in the back of the foot. All right, it's okay if your knee drifts forward, as long as the weight's in the back of this foot. Okay, nice and balanced. If you can't get this low yet, even if you're just doing body weight, then don't go this low. Go as low as you can, or as pain-free as movement as possible. All right, so this is the split squat. Okay, so again, you could program that with moving towards higher reps initially. You'll get some pretty good leg burn out of this because you have your body weight and whatever you're holding. I would encourage you to start with just your body weight on one leg. That's why a 2-legged exercise is going to be easier initially. So if you can't do this yet, back up to just a simple air squat and move to a goblet squat. You saw the goblet style, the way I was holding the dumbbell. You can move to a goblet squat initially. Okay, so start where you're at, but some sort of knee dominant exercise. So now I'm going to go into a hip hinge pattern. So I put my hands on my hips just to give me some feedback, and I'm going to bend my knees slightly. And this is what we call Romanian deadlift pattern, or without any weights in it, it's just a hip hinge. Okay, I'm going to slide my hips back as I do this. I'm staying in the back of my foot. I hate the word, hate's a strong word. I don't really enjoy the cue heels because a lot of times that means you're falling over. My toes are still on the ground. I'm sliding my hips backwards. You can see lots of YouTube videos on hip hinging. You can hold a PVC pipe on your back, all those type of things. Keeping my neck neutral. I'm really sliding my hips back. I'm feeling a really tight stretch on my hamstrings, which that alone should feel really good. Standing up nice and tall. I'm not leaning backwards when I stand tall. I'm just pushing my hips forward and squeezing my butt together. Okay, I'm showing you the front view just so you can see how wide my feet are. Some of you may toe out a little more, some may have tighter stance because your feet are straighter. All right, the point is to push this back. Now I'm just doing one dumbbell and pushing the hips back, so I could add one dumbbell in here. Get my weights in the back of the foot. My back is straight. These are my lats here, but my back is straight. I'm not overarching my back. I'm just neutral. So, if you're not sure how to do that, arc your back as big as possible, squeeze your abs as hard as possible, and that will put you in a neutral spine. Force those hips back. You'll feel that stretch in your hamstrings. And the dumbbell is going to help you stretch even further. If you haven't done this before, don't let the dumbbell go lower than right below your kneecap. Nothing good happens down there usually anyway, especially if you're experienced. Notice I came up a little more aggressively here and squeezed my glutes together, okay? And that's, as you get more comfortable with, that's something you want to work on, is really squeezing the glutes into the dumbbell. I'm not leaning backwards, I'm squeezing my glutes into the dumbbell, okay? Now I'm going to use 2 dumbbells just to add a little bit more resistance. I'm going to let them go down my leg. I could do these one-legged, of course, but balance is sometimes an issue. This is an easier place to start when it comes to Romanian deadlifts. Now, why are these exercises important for a runner? Well, the first one was more quad dominant exercise, a little bit of glute activation, and so that's going to help you not only push into the ground with more force so you can get stronger in that, but it's also going to align the lateral hip like we saw if you do the split squat correctly, and then help you to pick your leg up. There's a lot of shuffling that goes on that I see when I do running gait analysis from cycle to cycle, right? You never pick your knee up. If you look at where your heel to butt relationship, how far away that is a lot of distance there. That means you're just shuffling. And if you can pick your knee up higher, that automatically increases your stride length, okay? And so the higher you can get your knee, the faster, the higher you can do that and not be fatigued, the better you are in terms of stride length and performance, okay? But you have to be strong enough and able to do that. And then, of course, like I mentioned before, pushing more force in the ground reactions forces means that you can go further per stride, and so you're going to run faster. All right, now I'm showing a sumo style. You could work this in later, okay? And I'm just going wider here, same slight knee bend, all right? Now, the trick is with any Romanian deadlift, by the way, if I, just think back for a minute, is as you go over the side and push your hips back, don't let your knees lock up. Don't let your knees bend. It's called a hip hinge for a reason. It's only your hips that are moving. You put a little knee bend in there, just take the pressure off your spine, but you put a little knee bend in there and that's it. Don't change the knee angle at all through the whole range of motion, all right? And again, this will get more of the inside of your hamstrings. This could be just a nice stretch potentially. All right, so let's move to the big 3, I'm calling these, okay? For any runner, this is going to be, I won't say any. For most runners, these are going to be the 3 best exercises. And I say for most, especially this exercise here, if you're a person that's already very tall, and it's not likely that you are, especially if you're an office worker, but there are some who walk around with their shoulder blades already together, and you're very, very tall, this exercise is only going to feed that more. It's not a bad idea to do this exercise, but really stretch as you reach out, and you may actually have to do some chest pressing in some fashion, bench press, seated chest press, plate loaded bench, whatever, all these different versions of it. That might be more beneficial for you as long as you're holding that posture throughout your running. Now, what's important here, this is just a simple dumbbell bent over row. There is a myriad of horizontal rowing. Dumbbell row, if you like one of those, use it. I'm just showing a simple dumbbell row because it's time efficient and it gets after what I want, which is holding that position, stretching the hamstring, and what any row, horizontal row, the objective of that row is to squeeze the shoulder blades together. Okay, notice I reach out a little bit when I do this. I'm going to show the side view again. So I reach out to stretch those muscles that are below the shoulder blade, so some of our rhomboid and our lats, okay? And when I row, I don't shrug, so I stay out of this position. I'm not just moving my arm in the socket. I'm actively and concentrating on squeeze. You can just move your arm without moving your shoulder blade, okay? Squeeze the shoulder blade in without climbing through the trap, all right? Really focus on that. And then as you go down, stretch and let that shoulder blade slide across the back and then even tilt a little bit, or excuse me, even upwardly rotate a little bit without using all the kinesiology terms. Rotate a little bit so you feel the bottom of that shoulder blade even rotating this way a little bit as you reach out. So in other words, open that back up. Stretch the back again without shrugging. Stretch those muscles, okay? And then squeeze them again. Notice I'm rowing the dumbbell in closer to my belly. This is more of a traditional row where you can really focus on shoulder blades. I'll show you a row variant. So you could do this on one day. And then on the next day, you could do more of a post-delt or a posterior deltoid type of row. Now, notice I switched my hands, and that's exactly what I'm doing here. This is what we call a row to chest, okay? Is I'm still squeezing blades together, but because of the position of my hands now, and what we call a pronated grip, is my elbows have flared out a lot more, and I'm aiming to pull the dumbbells more into my chest region. In so doing, I'm going to activate more of the muscles of my back of my shoulder, my posterior deltoid muscles, okay? Or I should say the fibers that are associated with the posterior side of the deltoid, all right? And so I'm squeezing still the blades. Now you can do this without squeezing the blades and really hone in on post-delts. You can externally rotate, you can do all those things, but I'm just trying to give you some simple exercises that don't have a lot of technique to them, that are real easy to do to start to straighten up in the posturing. And what's the point of these exercises? To keep you tall when you're running. Okay, many times when I see people running, they start to run with their head and they start to slouch to the shoulders. And if you are an office worker and you like to run, you are getting the double whammy. So doing this exercise, a simple dumbbell row, can be very beneficial. Now, how long does it take to do these 3 exercises? You could do it as a circuit. Initially, one, then the next, and the next. One, then, I mean, this won't take you hardly any time. 15 minutes. And as you get heavier, maybe a little bit more, but it's not going to take much time for you to do this circuit. The benefits to your running and your posture is going to be tremendous. Again, there are other things you can do. You can do trunk work, but if I was going to pick 3 exercises and be incredibly time efficient, if you have some dumbbells at home or something weighted, okay, easily can be done, worked in twice a week just to start, even up to 3 times as you get going, okay? Now, as the loads get heavier and you get more in a higher frequency, or excuse me, higher volume, so you might do 4 sets and you can probably move to twice a week. But even then, you'll find benefit in doing this. It's going to help with your running performance, and it's going to help keep you healthy. I'm using this, these exercises is not just as a strength coach, but again, we're looking at many people that have come in with differing problems with the running gait, okay? And those problems with the running gait can be remedied with small exercises and some things I'll go over in another video, but they can also just be remedied with simple, well-done resistance training. These 3 exercises are a great place to start.